Hello. Today's video is my 10 buy lows in fantasy football. It is not a ranking video, and it's also not 12 guys that I cut down to 10 or 8 that I brought up to 10 to make it a nice even number. It just happened to be 10. 10 guys that I love pretty equally. The first guy being Brandon Aiyuk. And I loved Brandon Aiyuk with Debo healthy, and now at an increased price, but with Debo out, an even better Brandon Aiyuk. Love both of them. One of the main reasons is the points per game over the expected. Aiyuk and Debo are pretty safe when they're on the field playing, season long, because they are always going to be better than their volume because of the talent combined with the San Francisco offense and just the yards after catch situations. So they're always going to be better than their volume. They are a low volume offense. So that means when you take one of them out, the other one goes up way more than you would expect an average NFL receiver. So say T. Higgins is out, Jamar Chase, we'll talk about them later maybe. Jamar Chase goes up, but maybe not as much as Aiyuk does compared to when Debo is out. So Aiyuk, without Debo, going to be way better because those vacated targets are more valuable. First couple weeks, what happened? Well, week 1, he played the Jets. They are 2 times better than any other defense against receivers in 2023. Not great coming off of a contract dispute. And then week 2, they get Minnesota, where their whole scheme is basically not great for guys like Aiyuk and perfectly fine for guys like Debo. So what happens? Exactly. Aiyuk gets 5 targets, doesn't really do much, and then Debo gets 10 targets, has a great day. But now we're into week 3. They get the Rams, and that's why I say my buy opportunity is right now, because I think it's going to be a great week for him. In week 1, the Rams let JMO torch them. In week 2, who got them? The Cardinals. And Marv torched them. 2 guys that have similar skill sets to an Aiyuk, at least more downfield threats than like a Debo, that type. Amon-Ra. Greg Dortch, if you want to put it in that situation with Debo and Amon-Ra. So I like him for this week, and I love him long-term as well. The second guy I love, a guy I just mentioned, is Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is out. That's obviously a plus. He gets about 20 points per game with no T. Higgins. But just taking it back a step first. One, it's not only that there's just no T. Higgins. There's no Boyd there. I know there's been 2 weeks and nothing has happened, but that's also a plus. If we're just taking it back. Week 1, coming off that contract dispute, gets a Christian Gonzalez shadow. It's not an excuse, but it's also not a good matchup. In week 2, he gets the Chiefs. Not the best matchup. And they do this every single year. The Bengals this year, they're 0-2. Last year, they were 0-2. The year before that, they were 0-2. Every single year that Chase has been there, they've started off 0-2. So we look at last year. He had a bad game in week 1, had about 35 yards. Week 2, he comes out, 35 yards. Everyone trades him, everyone panics. And then week 3, 15 targets, 12 catches, 141 yards. Like, I would not be shocked one bit. He still gets 20 points per game without T. Higgins. Joe Burrow is still the same guy. He looks healthy. And then we look at this week 3 matchup. They get Washington. Not only were they 32nd against receivers last year, who did they get in week 1? They got the Bucks. Mike Evans, wide receiver 6. Godwin, wide receiver 8. Week 2, they get the Giants. It's just Daniel Jones. He's not going to destroy the Washington secondary. And then Neighbors is the wide receiver 3. They are not good, and they haven't changed. The Bengals have an incredible matchup, and that's why I say if you are buying them, you kind of have to do it now. I am also worried about T long term. A hamstring combined with T. Higgins' history of injuries, it just screams like it's going to linger throughout the season, and that does more benefits Jamar Chase. The third guy and a third receiver is Chris Olave. In week 1, he did make me a little bit nervous. 2 targets, but the offense looked great. So that was positive, but it's like, it's week 1. We don't know. Not much you can take off of it. And then they get to week 2, a really good defense. A lot of people were playing Dallas defense. A lot of people were not playing Saints. And that probably wasn't a good idea. Olave, not an incredible day, but he did have a 38% target share, and he was down at the 1. And I'm going to tell you, he had 12.8 points. You can buy him off of 12.8 points. If he got half a more yard on the one play where he got down at the inch-yard line, he would have 18.9 points, and you would not be able to buy him like you are able to now. In the scheme of this new offense, everyone is raving about Kubiak coming in as the new offensive coordinator, and it makes sense. Like, if you look at the numbers, in terms of motion, which is what Olave was best in last year, he was 3rd amongst receivers in yards per route when they actually used motion. The Saints just didn't. They were dead last, I believe, and now they are top 5. They are also 1st in rollouts, getting car on the move, and they are 1st in play action rate. That is all great for a receiver. He is their clear number 1 guy. I like Shaheed, but Shaheed is not going to be that number 1 receiver in New Orleans. So Olave getting a clear number 1 guy and a great offense who hasn't really had that big week yet, but all the signs are there. This makes him a really easy buy in fantasy, especially just buying low right now before he has that big game. The fourth guy, fellow teammate, old teammate I mean, and that's Garrett Wilson. The ideal guess, most of these are going to be saying you should buy them now. This one, you can totally buy them now. Not against that at all. I would say maybe the best opportunity would be after Thursday Night Football. He does get the Patriots. He gets Christian Gonzalez. And I know Christian Gonzalez was going to be on DK a lot last week. When he was on DK, he shut him down pretty well, actually. The few snaps that he was not on DK Metcalf had a 56-yard touchdown and dominated every other play that it seemed like Gonzalez was not on him. But he has been shut down on DK and Jamar Chase the last 2 weeks. If he does shadow Garrett Wilson, it's not ideal. We saw Snead shadow him in week 2. That's partially why he wasn't as great. And then San Francisco week 1. The Jets only scored 1 touchdown, I believe, in week 1. So again, a lot of the similarities, week 1 and 2, tougher matchups, but everything we want is there. The target share is there for Garrett Wilson. 33% target share. That's amazing. And we just look at the tendencies that Rodgers has. Like every reason that I wanted to draft Garrett Wilson has shown on film. And it's like, oh, amazing. Garrett Wilson is going to be targeted in the red zone and the end zone a bunch. Just like how Devontae Adams was, because Rodgers, he's just calling his own plays out there. Whenever they're at like the 1 yard line, it's so annoying when you have their running back. Brees is still going to be great, but it'll just be like he goes out there with Aaron Jones and the Packers all those years, and he's like, hey, let's just audible this on 1st and goal from the 1 yard line, and I'm just going to throw a flat route to Devontae Adams. And I'd always be playing against Devontae Adams. I know what's about to happen, and it would happen every single time. It's going to be similar eventually with Garrett Wilson. He just hasn't scored a touchdown yet. The volume is there, and Rodgers looks fine. Give me all the Garrett Wilson I can take. Pause. The next guy, another receiver. I promise I will at least get to one quarterback, running back, tight end eventually. But the 5th guy, also a receiver, and that is Brian Thomas Jr. The buy window a little bit longer because you really don't know when the breakout is going to come or when the flip is going to switch. So for this, week 3 to week 11, which is their bye week, I would say that is kind of your buy window. Wherever you want to take it, go for it. My comparison is Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne last year. Everyone knew that Jordan Addison was better. I don't know if everyone knows that Brian Thomas is better than Gabe Davis. He is, by a lot. Gabe Davis is not very good. But eventually, everyone's going to know. He is definitely the alpha type of receiver, the prototype. Jags don't have that. Like, they have Ingram, he's great at tight end. They have Christian Kirk out of the slot, he's great. He's not their alpha guy. Gabe Davis is very specific role player. He's not the alpha receiver. Brian Thomas can be that. So there's question marks. Not everything is perfect, but the upside is incredible. He had a great week 1 on just 21 passing attempts, and then week 2, similar to like a lot of the other guys I've talked about, Denzel Ward lines up against them. Not the greatest day for the Jags offense. The one worry I have is their neutral pass rate. Usually they're pretty pass heavy. The first couple of weeks, they've been very run heavy, which is kind of interesting. I don't really trust the Jags coaches fully, but for me, it's worth the risk. Other things about Brian Thomas, so I think it's just going to switch eventually with him and Gabe Davis. That's why I compare him to KJ Osborne, is it kind of just like went like this with KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison was getting more and more snaps and more targets, and KJ Osborne was getting less and less and less. Gabe Davis leads the Jags right now in targets and snaps and routes run. That is not a recipe for success long term, at least for a winning team that has Brian Thomas Jr. on the team. He's going to keep increasing all the way up until that bye, and then I think it'll be just similar to a lot of the rookies. Post-bye, he's going to be at that peak and stay there, and I think he'll be amazing at that point. When it comes to tight end, I would say Kincaid, and I know the volume hasn't been great through 2 weeks, but I don't think it's going to be something that stays that way. Just looking at history and the situation he's in. So history, the stereotype is it takes 3 years for a tight end to fully come to his own in the NFL, the longest of really any position. So 3rd year, that is when you expect tight ends to be good. So when a first-round tight end, that helps that he's a first-round pick, when a first-round tight end is good year 1, like Kincaid was in that second half of the year, it is a great sign and very rare. What's even more rare is that type of player doesn't pan out in year 2. And then you look at the situation. Kincaid, all the receivers leave, as in just Diggs and Davis, but 80% of those targets are gone in the receiver room. It was just Shakir left. They bring in these new guys, and there's not really that dominant guy. Shakir stays. Curtis Samuel isn't really doing anything. They draft Keon Coleman, and he got 0 targets. I don't think that's by accident. Kincaid is going to be that guy, I think, eventually. And then you just tell me 2 weeks ago, you say Josh Allen has 370 yards. That's it through 2 weeks. But he looks the same. Are you worried? No. Like he looks the same. Bills offense, that's fine. 370 yards, like yeah, I wouldn't expect much from Kincaid and not super panicked about the offense being super low passing volume for right now. they're not going to turn into the new Chargers. I think they're still going to be pass heavy overall when they're playing some teams that force them to pass more. So I'm not overly panicked about Kincaid, and I think he's a buy opportunity at a position that is not good. I got a hate comment today about Josh Jacobs, and I was confused because I didn't know it was a hate comment. It said something about him, and I was like, wait, Josh Jacobs hasn't been bad. What is he trying to say? And I was like, oh, he's mad because I told him to draft him because Josh Jacobs is RB24 right now. So now I'm making this, and I'm saying, hey, you should buy more Josh Jacobs. I love him because every reason that I liked him on draft day turned out to be true. I'm not saying I was right. I'm just saying the process worked out, which is amazing. His volume that he had in Las Vegas is there. But now he's on an offense that is way better in terms of efficiency. There's not many guys that have top 10 volume and top 10 offenses, and he's one of those guys. Like others, top of my head, like Bijan maybe with Atlanta, Brees, Saquon for sure. If you count CMC, which he's out for a long time, and then Josh Jacobs, like Kyron, I wouldn't say top 10 offense anymore. Like there isn't many running backs like that. And he is one of them once Jordan Love comes back. That's the buy low part, is that Malik Willis is in there. I didn't want to start him last week. He is 3rd in rushing yards, 13th in volume right now because he didn't get a single target last week with Malik Willis, and he's RB24. And that is with, obviously I'll say again, Malik Willis in week 2. But Philadelphia week 1, like the hardest running back you can have for a defensive line. And he gets them week 1, still has 80 yards, a solid day, hasn't scored a touchdown, and is still RB24. That is completely fine with me. I'll take more of them. And to make it just that much better, Marshawn Lloyd is on IR. I love him, so that makes me sad. I don't like saying that that's a better. But no RB2, and their other RB2 in terms of A.J. Dillon is also on IR. So there's not even an option to take away his volume if he wasn't being efficient, which he has been very efficient early on, which is a great sign. The other running back that I would say, not CMC, but Jordan Mason. I wouldn't say that CMC is like a sell. I'm just not saying I'm buying low on CMC. But I would honestly buy low on Jordan Mason, just the perception of him right now, I'd say. Because CMC, I'm not an injury expert. So if you do this, I would look up your own stuff on the injury. But the people that I trust, everyone's kind of saying like 6+ weeks minimum. It's not a 4-week IR stint and he comes back and he's full workload, CMC again. 6+ weeks. That leads him up to the bye week. So then you have his bye week and then he comes back like week 10 or 11 and he's getting his workload again. That's 7 weeks from now. And at that point, they're probably the best team in the division still, even without CMC. They're thinking playoffs for a very much Super Bowl contending team these last couple of years, and they have a 28-year-old running back coming off an Achilles tear. We just saw Greenlaw tear his Achilles running on the field after having this same exact injury. That is risky for a running back and is bringing him back in the regular season. So I'm not saying they're shutting him down for the year, but I also haven't seen much people talk about it, and I think that there's a good possibility. I obviously don't want it to happen, but at minimum, you're getting 6 weeks of Jordan Mason with a lot of upside in terms of having more weeks and beyond, or CMC does come back, gets injured again, they pull him and have him sit out a couple more weeks. So whatever it is, he is one of those rare guys, just like Josh Jacobs. He is getting RB1 volume, and he's in a top 5 offense. We talked about how efficient that offense is earlier with Aiyuk and Debo. Debo's out too. That helps the running back in the San Francisco offense. So he's getting that RB1 volume in a top 5 offense, and you have that minimally for 6 weeks. And I still think he's kind of being bought as a backup. My final 2 guys are both receivers, and they are both rookies. The first one being Marvin Harrison Jr. And I know what you're thinking, that is not a buy low, Joel. He just scored 29 points. And I get it. I still think it's a buy low opportunity because I think it's only going to go up and up and up. Week 1, he had 1 point. That's your buy low opportunity. If you missed it, I still think today is a buy low opportunity. Week 2, he played amazing. Rams defense, 4 catches only, 8 targets. He didn't have a catch in the second half. He's only had 2 quarters this year with a catch, but he is still in the perfect situation, and we saw it on Sunday, and it's only going to get better. Chris Godwin right now is the overall wide receiver 1. He is not the most talented receiver in the NFL, if you didn't know. He's really good, but he's not the most talented in the NFL. He had the 19th ranked volume, but his matchups were Detroit and Washington. Incredible schedule. Marv's next 2 games are against Detroit and against Washington. If you look back at his tape in college, you would think that you were watching a highlight tape, and it's just his regular game tape. Every single week, he would make insane catches. He would make insane plays. Like, it's not just contested catches. Like, it's everything. He is a guy coming from a university that has insane amount of receiver talent in the NFL. Every single one of them said that Marv is the best one. Marv is the best one. And you look at the 6'4" speedster that is One of the best in terms of college ever in hands, in body control. And what did all of them say was his number one strength? His route running. His route running. The 6'4 monster with a Hall of Fame to coach him his entire life. That's why he's so good at route running. And his work ethic is incredible. He's on a team with only Trey McBride there. I still don't think a great defense. The situation is just perfect, and I think that's going to play out these next couple weeks. The other rookie receiver is Xavier Worthy, and I think the window is a lot longer. Maybe wait a little bit even if you want to, because the next couple matchups, it's AJ Terrell, it's Marshawn Lattimore, then you got the bye week, and factoring in KC taking it slow with their rookies. Not just talking quarterbacks like Mahomes or Kelsey at tight end, but the receivers, Tyreek Hill and Rashee Rice. Year one, they were great, and they just didn't really get used until the second half of the year. Everyone was begging them to use Rashee Rice more last year, and they just didn't until like week 9 or 10, and they're like, okay, fine. They're ready for it. We'll take him on. But the thing is, that is when fantasy is most important. So if he's not going to be great for these next few weeks, that's okay. He's already playing 60% of snaps, which is a lot for a Kansas City receiver. And he's going to get more and more and more as his chemistry grows and as he grows as an NFL player. And then he's going to kind of hit that peak at the end of the year. So if he does hit, which it looks like he's doing perfectly fine so far, he can be amazing in fantasy. If Marquise Brown was not on the team, aka he wasn't on the team when people drafted in fantasy, he'd probably be drafted around wide receiver 25. And Brown is out for the year now. So that's where I think we should be thinking. He's looked solid, nothing incredible, nothing bad at all, but solid, very worthy of where he didn't do that on purpose. I'm so sorry. He looked very worthy of where he's being drafted in terms of his ADP. And then you take Hollywood out. They're in a top 3 offense in terms of passing. The upside for the end of the season when it matters most is tremendous. If you guys like this video, leave some hate comments below. I'll try to answer as many as possible, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thursday video probably, maybe Friday. It's coming soon.